Hey, everybody. Welcome to Watches Within Us. We've got another watch talk you might hear a car going by. Apparently, mufflers are optional in this day and age. So, anyway, we've got another live stream here on Saturday to have a interesting discussion about three watches, new release watches in particular. And then also, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about Rolex. Because it's been getting a lot of attention lately in terms of what's going on with the GMT Master II line. So we will be doing all of that. Catching up, folks, on things. There have been no videos since the last live stream, so there's not a whole lot to catch people up on, which of course is fine. I've decided it's fine. I am actually working on. I shot a video, so it'll be in the same shirt because I kind of didn't get, you get stuck with my KU shirt. You'll only mostly see the Adidas logo. It's going to be on my top 5 watch releases of 2023. Now that we're in December, I feel comfortable enough going ahead and doing that. I think it makes sense to release it in 2023. I actually am going to also plan to do a video on what I think were the top 5 it's weird to say top. The 5 worst watch reveals for releases, I should say, for 2023. That'll probably be in a week or two. Actually, the Discord, which link in the video description below if you want to participate in the Discord, having a conversation because I needed some help on that. I didn't need help on coming up with like 5 of my favorite releases, but in terms of 5 of the bad releases, I have 3 that I knew I wanted to run with. So I was soliciting ideas for other things to maybe highlight because there are a lot of blunders that happen in the world of watches. And I think it can be a little bit of fun, maybe not for them, but fun for me and fun for hopefully the audience to talk a little about those. So that'll probably be in a week. The video with the top 5 watches, I might get that out today. I've been editing it this morning. So I shot it this morning. I've been in editing right now. I couldn't get it done before now. So I still have more editing to do, but I'm probably going to go see Godzilla today. So one must wait. That's the rules. So anyway, before we get started with today's topics, good morning, Kevin. Hope things are going well for you out in Florida. And Underhay, hello, good morning. Welcome to the live stream. And yes, you did make it. You don't have to watch it on record. Now, unfortunately, is this going to be a particularly strong episode that you wish you had seen? I don't know. That's going to be something that you decide in retrospect. But we do have some interesting watches. I won't say they're great, but we have some interesting watches to talk about. And the first thing I want to start with is Audemars Piguet. Poor Audemars Piguet. I feel like they're my favorite company to kind of make fun of lately. I almost said they're the brick watch company of 2023. That's totally unfair, and I shouldn't have even thought that. But the thought popped out, and so now you've heard it. However, I think, and we'll explore that with this watch, but maybe we should start with this watch. So you can see the image of it. But what it's called is the Travis Scott Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar Open Worked Cactus Jack Brown Ceramic Collaboration, I guess. So if you want to maybe call it the Chocolate AP, which is kind of like what I guess Travis Scott mentioned on his album. I don't listen to Travis Scott, so I don't know anything about his albums. My understanding is he is really into watches, though. And not too surprising, he thus has a collaboration with a very prestigious brand. There is a lot to say. This is a limited edition watch, and I'm trying to think where I want to tackle it. So it's a ceramic watch. Some of the noteworthy things. We'll look at some close-up photos. But I wanted to say how much it was and what the limited run is. That's why I'm scrolling down because I don't remember. Okay, the watch limit count is 200 pieces, 178,000 Swiss francs. That must be around 200,000 US dollars or so, I would think. 41 millimeter case, very thin. It's just under 10 millimeters, like you'd expect with Royal Oaks. I mean, they're relatively compact for their sizing, and all the rest. So again, it's a perpetual calendar. So the thing to note is exploring what's different or what was done on the watch. So as you can see, there's a lot of this Cactus Jack branding as part of the collaboration. There's this sort of hand-drawn. And we could zoom in. Sort of this hand-drawn font use. Actually, it's all throughout the watch. So in terms of consistency, that's there. But you see the print for Audemars Piguet, but like all of the markings for the various calendar functions are in the sort of hand-drawn format, as well as these numbers around the edge of the bezel. And you see the little Cactus Jack labeling here as a handset. The watch itself is brown. So this is where that chocolate brown is coming from, is the case itself is this very dark, well, kind of I'd say more of a milk chocolate looking shade to the ceramic, which ceramic is very easy to make a variety of colors out of. So that's not all that surprising. Now, Koji, welcome, Koji, to the live stream. And thank you for being a 99-cent club member. Koji says, oh, look, another Royal Oak with sleepy faces. You cannot sleepy face this Royal Oak, Koji, because there's a lot to not like about it. So we have to wake up and we have to face it. We have to face it. Scott says, I do like the chocolate case. Well, thank you, Scott, for your feedback. And thank you for being a 99-cent club member. And thank you for participating while I'm actually doing this live. I wanted to know what you guys think about the chocolate case. I think it's okay. Brown is a real risky color. Now, we just don't see it very often. If you think about it, you don't even see it in dials. Case coloration, not all that surprising, in my opinion, that we rarely see brown because it's not exactly the natural color of steel or really any other metal that we're normally talking about. And ceramic allows us to have a lot more flexibility. So I understand that there's sort of a logistical argument as to why we don't see chocolate brown watch cases just historically. But I think it's a polarizing choice. In theory, you'd think it could work with a lot because brown, like khakis and all the rest, there's a lot of people wear a lot of brown. So in one way, it's not weird. I do think it looks all right. I'm not enamored with it. I think when you're talking really dark stuff, I would rather think something like a black. Granted, I mean, I do have a PVD black watch, so and the Omega black on black and Dark Side of the Moon, all those things sort of resonate with that. Because I think the concern is kind of this, like Koji has said, like poop emoji. Do people think chocolate or do they think poop emoji? That's the risk, I think. Neff, hello, welcome to live stream, and thank you for being a 99-cent club member. I do appreciate it. But the case coloration is not my problem with the watch. Actually, this from a distance, let's zoom out. Let's zoom out, folks. Let's zoom out. Like, look at this. Like from a distance, I think it looks pretty well put together. All right, chocolate brown, not my favorite. Vertical brushing, I think, works with the case material. That looks nice. I'm not an OpenWorks person. I would never buy an OpenWorks watch, so I'm not a huge fan of the OpenWorks approach here. That said, the watch does seem to be, even kind of at this distance that we're using right now, relatively legible, which is normally my problem with OpenWorks, is I think it's hard to tell apart. Actually, I think the calendar functionality is the easiest thing to be able to tell. It's the time telling that might be a little bit more frustrating. And I'm not quite sure why these numbers go all the way to like 52. So I didn't look that up. I'm sure it's in the article. Read the article. Article link is in the video description. This monochrome watches is going to be our source for 3 of our 4 discussions today. And so anyway, there's probably a purpose to that. I don't care because I'm not buying that watch. $200,000 chocolate watch. I don't want it. But my problem with it is the font. I hate the font. There's a Patek, I can't remember because I'm not a Patek person. Maybe one of you in the audience is a Patek person. There's a Patek that did this. Not Cactus Jack's this, but there is a Patek that went and they had one of their watchmakers hand write out all the fonts on the watch. And it's like a super popular Patek. I think it's ugly. I think the font is ugly. I hate the hand-drawn look of fonts like that. And so I think that Patek is ugly, and this is no different. It's legible, as is the Patek. In fact, this is probably a better font than what is on that Patek. And I'm going to be extra snarky and double down on that. I can't even remember exactly what that Patek looks like. I looked at it earlier this year. It's an older model, but it checks out. But this sort of, I've never been enamored with these sort of hand-drawn font approaches on watches. I just think it looks sloppy, and that's my biggest problem with it. The rest of it is going to be a take it or leave it. Like this branding, which I'm sure is all Cactus Jack oriented branding, means nothing to me. So it's whimsical at best for someone who doesn't know, and at worst, it adds a childishness to it that the hand drawn font already adds. Which I guess in that regard it integrates well. As a watch, it does look like intelligibly put together. I just don't like the pieces of it that are assembled. So does this rise to the level? Is this going to be on my top 5 worst watches of 2023? Absolutely not. No way. This is not nearly as bad as Dead Girl in the Plastic Lawn Chair. But unless you're into the artist, Travis Scott, I don't see why you would ever pick this watch over anything. The only thing that goes for it, outside of fans of Cactus Jack and Travis Scott, is if the chocolate brown resonates with you and doesn't poop emoji you. And that obviously is a very personal question that each and every one of you gets to ask yourselves once you leave this live stream today, because I can't answer that for you. Anyway, to catch up with chat, Koji says, I know you're not a fan of written numerals like the PP5212 where it's executed much better. Well, is that the one that I was just making fun of and said was actually even worse? Because if that's the case, you were right. I am not a fan of handwritten numerals. I am a fan, of course, of written numerals because how else would I be able to read them if they weren't written? So, but anyway, I'll go ahead and load up that Patek so people can see it. That's why I'm typing in the background to you know what? I will stand corrected that the Patek font is actually better than the AP font. I was wrong about that. I couldn't remember it very well. And yeah, it was fine to the cookie. So this one is more legible. I still think it's dumb. Can we zoom in? We weren't going to talk about Patek. Like the numbers are cleaner, but like the O's in October, it reminds me of like when I was practicing my penmanship in kindergarten. I really don't like it. The watch configuration, aside from the date, is pretty good. Date's okay. But no, I do not like these fonts. But you're right. I do stand corrected. This is inferior of a font choice to whatever. But this Patek had better penmanship than AP. We'll say it like that. But the Patek numbers alone are less offensive. The words are problematic on all of them. I do respect the German 7 usage, though, on the Pateks. I do like that. Anyway, so what else have we got? What else we got here in the chat? Neff says, isn't this the guy that caused a stampede and got a bunch of people killed? I don't recall if this was the one that happened at or not. I'm sorry. Don't remember. Koji says, I guess I'm very old, but when I think of Cactus Jack, I thought Mick Foley is into watches. Well, see, this is the problem of being into pinball. Like my thing behind me. Oh, my watch today is my Ricochet watch from Mr. Jones. I got some Deluxe watch straps because Black Friday sales finally had them so you could get them under $100. So I put this on some sort of gray calfskin thing instead of the mesh bracelet that normally is. It needs to be broken in a little more, but it's nice and soft. I will say that. Thankfully, the watch strap was not more than the watch in this case. This was one of the cheaper watches straps that they had. Back to Cactus Jack. Sorry. So when I hear Cactus Jacks, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma has a huge pinball arcade. I've never been to it, but they used to host a very large championship there, and it's called Cactus Jacks. Incidentally, there's a pinball machine made by Gottlieb Premier, now defunct company, called Cactus Jacks from, I believe, the early 90s, which I've also never played. You don't see Gottlieb Premiers around very much, but it's not a pinball live stream. You can listen to my podcast if you want to hear about pinball. So anyway, just throwing that out there as an aside. Koji says, I like the numbers, but the letters, not so much. Okay. And I'm sure that's what you mean is on the Patek, on the 5212. Scott says, yes, that is the same Cactus Jacks, Neff. Okay. So Scott knew about it. So it is the Stampeder. Underhay says, it just looks messy to me. Let's jump back to the actual. I'm not even showing you what I'm clicking on right now. I'm sorry. I blew my head back up there. This was the Patek with the numbers that Koji likes. And now we're talking once again about this, the Cactus Jacks watch. Underhay says, it just looks messy to me. The handwritten font might look a little better on a plain dial, but a skeleton dial really needs a clearer font. that's where I do think, Underhay, that this choice with the very bright white, like almost like Luminova, like what we think of a standard stereotypical Luminova, no patina applied or anything, looks like that bright of white. I do think that works there. I'm not as big of a fan of this where it does seem more Fotina-y on the chapter ring section. But it's tough when you open works a watch like this. So I just, looking at the open works aspects, I mean, maybe these are mirror polished screws. I don't know. It just, I'm not getting tremendously good. Or not. It doesn't feel unfinished, but it's not impressive. Like I don't like open work watches in general, though. So let me not. I don't want to whine too much about that. I wasn't going to like it no matter what. Is my point. So I'm not going to judge it too harshly on that decision. It's just not, open works are just not for me. Neff says, how is he not in jail? How he's not in jail? Oh, they're continuing to talk about Travis and the Stampede incident. Cloudkin, Ken, welcome to live stream, and thank you for being a 99-cent club member. Funny thing is that the watch does remind me of Mankind's mask. And so that got a chuckle out of Koji. And so everything is now going great. Okay. Enough about this. I feel like I bully AP. They're rich. They can be bullied a little bit. So let's shift things up. Baltic. So Baltic, not a brand I talk about too much on here. Baltic actually has, I haven't played this video before. All I did is mute it. And apparently this video is not just about the new watches. So this is what we're going to talk about. They now have three, in fact, gold colored. I need to specify that these are not gold watches. They are gold PVD'd, but they do have a new trio of watches that have the gold aesthetic. And I just thought this was kind of interesting because I think this is a market that does exist and is not exploited very much by very many manufacturers. Tissot has played a little bit around like doing gold, either like usually it's a little bit of gold, like on the bezel and stuff of the PRX, or if you're going with a more PVD look, they have some stuff that actually goes like all in on the PRX. So there's stuff like that. But this follows a very, I think of it as it's a mix of traditional and atraditional aesthetics. I think gold and black looks extremely good. And I think these dials look extremely good. So you take something like this where you've got these Breguet numerals. And again, link to the article. It's at Monochrome, but the link is in the video description if you want to go and read up on these and look at these photos. But so you've got like the traditional nature of Breguet numerals. You've got the offset small seconds, which again is something that is done in a number of dress watches. I won't necessarily say that's a super traditional look. It's not a common look, but I do think it actually dates back quite a while. Black, though, black dials, not the most common on dress watches. Black, though, with gold, the gilt numeral look, very attractive, if a more modern take. And that's part of the reason I really liked the bronze cased black dialed version of the Tudor. Black Bay Bronze was the name of the model. So they've got a chronograph version. They have this small seconds version. And then they have a central section sector dial version, which if I were to guess will probably be the one that appeals to most people, mainly because I think that they're all open case spec. These are all mechanical, by the way, for the price point in particular, decently looking movement applications, Miyota movements in the case of the time only ones. Actually, yeah, I don't know if this is going to click really well. Like this one, I don't care for because they crop into their Arabic numerals for the hour markers. And you know me in that, if you've watched me ever, that's not a thing I really resonate with. So I don't really like this one. My favorite is probably this just because of the heavy lean into the Breguet styling. But I think this one with the center seconds and people love sector dials. Those really, when Omega, it wasn't necessarily the best seller, but when Omega made that CK watch last year with the sector dial, I think it just really triggered a lot of people into thinking, oh, you know what? Sector dials are really cool. And Longines has a lot, or at least has one really popular sector dial watch. So I think Baltic's exploiting the right thing here. Price wise, very, very approachable. These are all under, I think, $600 US, and size-wise, quite wearable as well. So again, it's all going to kind of blend together. So you need to read the article if you want to know like which one's the 38 millimeter, which one's the chronograph one, which is a different sizing, I think. But price point wise, these are all like floating around 500 to 600 euro, I think. So it's anyway. Are they for me? Absolutely not. Actually, some of that was the only one of them is the 565 euro. This the HMS 02 is 385. And okay, so the Bicompax is 565 and the HMS is 385. So okay, so you have your choice there. I'm not into PVD for gold. I generally just, and this is probably where Baltic will run into the biggest issue. So a lot of people don't like it when gold isn't gold. Like if gold isn't real gold, if gold isn't a gold case, there's worries about how long will it last? Is it going to look ugly if it starts to wear? Does it look cheap? Point blank, I think a lot of Seikos that are gold colored look cheap, look fake. I think, at least in photos, and these are obviously photos that they have provided, this looks pretty elegantly executed. I would like to handle it to see if it feels, obviously it's not going to have the weight of gold or anything. The thing is, you can do all of these styles though with those like gilt gold letters and still have just shown off stainless steel cases. So in that regard, I don't know, but I think for the price point, it fills a void I'm not aware of. I mean, Brew, I think, kind of has some color schemes that run this way as well as a micro brand, but Baltic, a better known brand. I think this could do okay for them. I don't know. I think a lot of people would rather the cases just be straight up steel. But if you're looking for a gold looking watch and you just, I mean, it's a significant investment to go in on gold unless you're willing to go vintage. And a lot of people wouldn't be comfortable going vintage because they worry about the ability for the watch to be serviced and all the rest that, the risks that you take with vintage. So in that regard, you either need to basically be willing to cross. I mean, you can go non-vintage in gold and get and find something under 10,000 US dollars, but unless you're getting really, really small, you probably will be forced to be over $5,000. And that's used. New, it's going to be more challenging. So given all of that, if you're not someone who's willing to spend $5,000 on a dress piece because you're not going to wear it very much, or you don't want to spend or can't spend $5,000 on a watch period, this might be the avenue you want to look at. I probably couldn't get past that. It's PVD. I'm fine with PVD coating. I'm not fine with PVD gold, but it was a new release and I thought they looked pretty good for in terms of design choices. Nothing trailblazing here, but I think they were very safe, logical, smart dress watch designs. And I'm very sympathetic to the idea of there being affordable options in the dress watch space because it gets a little silly when you think about how simple dress watches are. And I'm tired. This is a dentist thing. I'm so tired, as nice as many of them look, of everyone always telling everyone get an Orient Bambino. Guys, we shouldn't be steering everyone getting into the hobby because it's usually new people who ask for opinions. We shouldn't be steering everyone into one watch only. And I hate that. I feel like and it's a range from, maybe Teddy Baldessar might be the most egregious example of it because he just does so many videos. And it's a fair suggestion, but I just feel like everyone gets shoehorned into the bait. Oh, you want a dress watch under $1,000? Get a Bambino. Like it's one look. Yeah, they come with some different dial colorations, but no. In some ways, I don't like the Bambino as a dress watch either. I think you're kind of stretching it a little bit. But Baltic, I think, and they have stuff that doesn't look gold. So anyway, FYI, I'm rambling a little bit, but I just feel like we need some dress watch options that aren't Bambinos. I have nothing against the Bambino. It's like the one thing that everyone suggests, and I'm getting really sick of it. Like we need to have a little more variety here. It's kind of like the desire to have other integrated sports watches under $1,000 to suggest besides the PRX. And that's where like Christopher Ward can come in and say, hey, we have the 12. You can look at that. And if you don't get it in titanium, it can be price competitive. I mean, it's going to be more, but it can be competitive. I don't like it when there's only one suggestion for everyone, because then it feels like we we funnel them all into this sort of uniformity, and people should be able to have a little bit of the part of the point, part of the fun of being able to wear a watch is to express some personality. And I don't think people's wallets should mean, oh, okay, well, your personality in the dress watch space is confined to the Bambino. So Baltic is an option. There you go. Neff says golden black always works, especially in the one with the Breguet numerals. Okay, so Neff agrees with me that the Breguet looking one is the most fun. Koji says, I have the same small quibble with the Breguet numerals as with the MR01 I have. They're too big for the dial. Either shrink them or make it 38 millimeters. Otherwise, it's a great daily wear. Well, those are all fair points. And that's part of the, I do think that is something we seem to run into a lot more, unsurprisingly, I feel, when we get towards the more affordable price tier points, that the watches are either forced to conform to the case configurations that Baltic already, in this case, is already using, or they feel they needed to fill up the space. Who knows what the design. If you want to guess, I'm more than happy to give you a guess. My guess would be that they might have been okay with a large amount of white space. In fact, I agree with you, Koji. This definitely should just have a lot more white, or in this case, black space than it does. But given the small seconds ends up consuming almost all the space from the chapter ring to the central handset, that they felt like it would look too weird. That's my guess. And so they just thought they needed more gold by blowing up all these Breguet numerals in order to make it feel like there was the same amount of gold kind of dispersed around the dial. Obviously, this will always be asymmetrical because the small seconds is in an asymmetrical position. But that's my best guess. I do agree. It would look far like we see like Omega has watches with the Breguet style numerals. Longines does as well, executed in I think a far more balanced fashion. But those watches also cost more than this does. So it's one of those things. Underhay says, I like the fact that none of them have a date, but I would always buy stainless watches. Baltic charge a lot for a watch with a seagull movement. That's something that is a good point. And it kind of reminds me, even though the new version, the 02 series of the Studio Underdog watches, moved from the Seagull unit, people really criticized how much those prices went up, even though the movement in and of itself that they've dropped in there is not a particularly impressive movement. So always a fair issue to evaluate. Depends how much you value the movement over the design language. Koji says, the Hangzhou movement is pretty decent. Oh, he's directing that to Underhay. It needed an adjustment from the watchmaker, but now runs fairly decently. I have no experience with the Seagull movements. I've heard they're decent, but of the era. I mean, it's a very old patent design. It's kind of like looking at Valjoux at this point, where it's very functional, but we could do a lot better. Maybe not so much talking about accuracy as we do about wear and how well the movements hold up. Underhay is acknowledging he's heard good reports about the Hangzhou, but that he hears that the Seagull Chrono has a high failure rate. I've never owned a Seagull Chrono. I've looked at a couple. I've never pulled the trigger. Neff says, I wish there were more true dress watches under $1,000, thin, small, no date, and manual wind. I don't dress up much anymore. Koji thinks my theory may be good, but and some of that about the size of the small seconds, that may be driven by the movement. I mean, looking at the back of these, if we can bounce over real quick, we do still have a fairly significant amount of space, it seems, from the edge of the movement to the edge of the case. And so if they were to blow it up even more, they might have been really worried that things were going to look funky, especially if they were hell bent on doing display case backs. And there's a lot of things I don't like in watches. There's a lot of things I'm sure a lot of us don't like in watches, but one of mine is I hate display case backs when it's this itty bitty movement, and then you just got all this edging metal, the case construction to screw it down. It just looks really bad. They should just close case it, honestly, if that's going to be the case. And I think that's the answer for most people is, I'm not going to, especially for a budget brand, I'm not going to expect them to have a movement that perfectly fits in the case size because they're not making their own movements. Just hide it. Just hide it with a closed case back. Then it can be as small as you want. The other catch, though, is you do have to still make sure you're balancing the dial, because if all that stuff's towards the end, of the, what you want to put out at the chapter ring. If that's outside of the scope of the movement, you start having to factor in, can your handset be that long and all the rest of it? So it gets tricky. Hey, Med Gas Guy. Are you an anesthesiologist? That would be my guess. But regardless, welcome to Livestream. Hope you are enjoying the discussion. Neff says, you can make a smaller second watch, you can make a smaller small seconds on any, I'll get it right eventually, Neff. You can make a smaller small seconds on any movement with it. Only the position of the pinion is fixed, not the size of the hand or scale. That's true. At least you could make them smaller. Larger gets a little tricky. And eventually weight starts to come into effect. Though that's more of a challenge for quartz watches and the weight of the handset, which is why taking old mechanical like pin lever movements and dropping in quartz movements doesn't always work if the handsets were really heavy on the mechanicals. But we're getting outside the scope of the discussion. Coach says, yes, that's a huge pet peeve, the big spacers for a small movement. Nobody likes to see the spacers. You just hide them. If you need them, okay. I do understand. Not everyone is Patek. They're not going to make a case in a movement and be designed to be, like cinching up like gears. I'm gearsing my fingers. I sprained my pinky yesterday, so I shouldn't have done that. Now it hurts. What doesn't hurt is for us to move on to our third watch, and then we'll get to the Rolex discussion. But our third new watch is the Doxa SUB 300 Beta collection. Now, I believe they've had 300 Betas for a little while now, but these are some new ones. Now, if you're not familiar with the Beta look, basically, I've never owned a Doxa. Let me crash course on Doxa. First, I have to drink orange because my orange Sunkist is thematic to Doxa, which is normally known for their orange dials. Because supposedly, don't know if this has been confirmed or not, but supposedly Doxa was the first company to put an orange dial on the dive watch, arguing that it was, under their tests, the most legible whilst under the water. These do not do that. The 300 Beta series is, instead of trying to do highly legible dials, are trying to do more fashionable dials. And I think the first wave of 300 Betas that I was familiar with were like all black dials. And you can kind of see what's going on here where, okay, we got a white dial, we got a black dial. Did you see the edging here once we get to the edge of where the bezel action interplays and the sort of external portion of the sort of a fixed bezel and the rotating part? I assume these numbers, you can barely see these numbers. I don't know if you're looking on a phone, you might not be able to. I can see them on the computer monitor, but it's all black on black. So stylistically interesting, it's like an aesthetically pleasing, but not functionally useful sort of colors. Like this light baby blue is not going to be the easiest thing to read under the water. But so that's what they're trying to do, is sort of, they're still the tool watch. You've still got the depth and all that to use them, but they're less technical. They're less about being functionally useful as divers and more about being cool to wear, like here in a dress shirt with a cuff, something where you'd be like, oh yeah, I'd actually like to wear it to the office, or wear it to work, or wear it to the beach for fun, sorts of things. So anyway, they've got a whole slew of these. It's a collection. So they've got 3 of them have black dials with various color accents. You saw the close-up of the baby blue one. They've got the one with the orange accents. They've got the yellow, got Bumblebee. So you got that. And then there's the silver tone one. They've got this blue dial, and we talked about the white with the black. So anyway, they got like 5, I guess, looking at that photo. These are about 2,500 euros, just 2,410 on rubber. And if you want the bracelets, 2,450. So it's not much more for the rubber version. These are powered by the Sellita SW200, which I think is pretty standard for the direction that Doxa has been going. Don't know. They probably historically used ETA, but it does seem they've been moving in the Sellita direction, as we've seen out of many manufacturers that are continuing to use eBosch movements. And size-wise, these are 42.5 millimeter diameter dive watches, so pretty standard in the dive watch space. Lug to lug, though, these are, if you've ever looked at the Doxas, that's part of the reason I've always found them pretty attractive, is they do not have a big lug to lug. These are like 45-ish or so, I think, like 44.5. Okay, 44.5 millimeters lug to lug. So these wear really well, even though they're over 40 millimeters. So smaller wrist individuals, you can explore these because the overhang risk is pretty minimal. I mean, under 45 millimeters, that's most wrists, most male wrists at least can wear that pretty successfully. And thickness is just under 12 millimeters. So actually, for a series of watches that are water resistant to and that's why it's the sub 300. I've looked more at the 200s over time, but 300 meters of water resistance in a sub 12 millimeter case thickness. Again, even though these are all more about aesthetic style than substance, the technical specifications are still here. Yeah, you might not be able to read your timing bezel under the water, but this watch can go under the water. So anyway, I just thought it was a really interesting release. I didn't remember, Doxa's been playing around a lot lately. If I were to say, like, what do I think Doxa should have done? I would have advised them back in the past. They didn't just do dive watches. And I think Doxa, it would behoove them to get outside of just doing all these dive watches. That being said, going and actually just doing dramatically different interpretations aesthetically to their dive watch line is probably easy. It's definitely easier because they can still use the same cases. So they might actually find a lot more success going that route than doing what I would say and like explore, like making some pilot watches or heaven forbid a dress watch. But going in some other direction than just, they're a little one trick. They like the 200 versus the 300 looks quite a bit different, but they're a little bit one trick. They're very, very just sort of, we just do dive watches. So, but that said, this modern look, there's a lot about this that I think is really cool. Would I be in the market for it? No, most likely not. But I have plenty of dive watches as it is. Like I might add one more and that's about it. I'm not a big time, but if you're into collecting dive watches, I'd say definitely take a look at this to see if, especially if you've not turned to Doxa before, and see if maybe this new aesthetic, that might be something that just really clicks well for you, that you might like. And again, it's not just these two that we've got most of the photos on. The black here has a sunburst effect to it. I do love sunburst and radiant dials, so that's nice. I also think their blue one really pulls that off well. So if you like that, this sub 300 beta Caribbean, they all have names. So diving star for the yellow and Caribbean for the blue, aquamarine for the, what I call baby blue. Apparently it's aquamarine. So I guess if your birth date's in March, you might like that one. But the Sea Rambler, that's a weird name. I don't like that name, but I like the white. That looks really cool. It's like a polar dive watch. Very, very funky. All right, catching up on the chat. Neff says, I like the white dial. Okay, I like the white dial too, Neff. We're in agreement. Mike, welcome to the live stream, Mike. Says, I like the white dial as well. Okay, we got 3 for it. And well, you are welcome. I'm always happy to try and do something. I'm trying to be consistent and do these Saturday streams, and I think I've done a pretty good job sticking with it. So I'm proud of myself for that. Underhay says, I agree the white dial Doxa looks great, though an orange strap would look better. That's where you can go to what, Barton or I don't know if Crown and Buckle does. Barton's pretty cheap for silicone bands though. You get an orange strap through them for sure. I'm sure that they must have orange, right? I don't. Looking over to where my straps are. Do I own any orange straps? I don't think I do. I have red. Neff says, agree on the orange strap. I'd get it on the bracelet with an additional orange strap. That would be really sharp. That would probably be the way I would go as well. Dive watches, I think, look really good on bracelets. And so what I like to do over the last couple of years in particular is I will get my whatever dive watch it is, like I have my Seiko, I've got my Orient, I've got my 300M Omega, and I put them like as of the fall, I put them on the bracelets because I like how they look. And then when it starts to warm up, like late spring, early summer, I usually throw them on silicone bands, and mostly for comfort, but it also makes them a little more fun. Like the bracelet's kind of serious mode, and then the silicone, because it can be so colorful, a little more fun. That's why I have colors like I have dark shades too, but I have I have white straps. I've got light gray, red, as I've mentioned. So those sort of things, because drive watches are also where I tend to have more fun dials. Like my Orient Cano has got that really red dial, and the Seiko is that aquamarine turtle shell looking dial. I have that shimmering gray dial for the 300. So they're not really. I mean, you can argue gray being staid, but it's radiant gray, so it's fun. That's why I cite it. But speaking of fun and citing and color, we're going to talk one last thing today, and that is Rolex. Now, this has been going on for a while now. This article, again, link is in the video description. So this one's not from Monochrome Watches. This is from Watch Pro. And this was from, this wasn't too long ago, November 22nd. I was like, when did this article come out? This has been getting a lot of discussion, so I have to hop on the bandwagon and talk about it along with everything else. There is a rumor that will not die, maybe it shouldn't die, that the Rolex GMT Master II line is going to discontinue this color configuration, commonly known as EU Pepsi. All right, commonly known as just Pepsi. Pepsi, without the word just. Tony, who's sometimes been on the live stream here, would call it EU Pepsi. Now, Rolex doesn't really leak. It's very interesting. Like when it comes to watch reveals, like the last few watches and wonders I've followed and all that, there is speculation galore. Again, just like in pinball, people love to speculate about themes and what's the next game that's going to come out. Same thing happens in watches. The thing is, with Rolex, it really is just blind guessing. Blind guessing where they'll say, all right, well, this model, like they'll use logic, like, all right, this model line's long in the tooth. This colorway's been in play for a while. Hey, they've changed the case sizes on all these other Rolexes. This is the odd one out. They're going to have to do a change. All of that is factored in by many, many people, which can help potentially with your accuracy. However, in pinball, like all the themes and stuff, we know these because pinball leaks like a sieve. It's a colander. All the stuff happening is known by some individuals, and they drink and they talk and all the rest of it, and people find out. With Rolex, they play it very tight to the vest. So it's very interesting that whenever there's a Rolex rumor, my default instinct, and part of the reason why I wasn't initially going to even talk about this, is people are bored. It's Rolex. You get the most clicks talking about Rolex. I mean, I should have put this as my first topic because I would have gotten my most audience retention, but I didn't want to. It's what gets the views, so people will talk about it, and people love to collect them. And the Pepsi's really popular, so it all kind of like makes a good soup where people will be like, it's good to talk about simply because it's a topic people care about. But normally I would be like, well, how is there even a rumor about Pepsi being discontinued? The reason why because initially I just thought someone made this up to either get attention or just to stir the pot, or their videos needed some views. And so they made it. Honestly, it could be that trite. Welcome to YouTube. But the reason behind it, according to this Watch Pro article, is the secondhand dealers are saying that they are not receiving as many offers from private collectors, buyers who are buying from authorized dealers, trying to sell the secondhand market their used Pepsis. So the wondering is Rolex having production problems with making the Pepsis because the secondhand market is receiving less of them to then sell? And that's leading to the speculation. Could this possibly mean that the Pepsi will be discontinued? So Rolex will discontinue colorways. We know that. So that's one piece of the logic. We're seeing less of the Pepsis on the secondhand market. Like the secondhand market is saying we're having less come in. So then that makes people go, is the Pepsi bezel hard for Rolex to make? And if they're struggling to make it, would that be a reason to go ahead and discontinue it? In addition to the fact that it's been around a long time. My thoughts, maybe, but I think that's a big maybe. Here's the part I want to go ahead and dismiss, and maybe I'm wrong. I guess we'll find out if Rolex does it. Well, maybe we won't. We probably won't. If Rolex even does discontinue the Pepsi bezel, we probably won't know the reason why. I find it extremely far-fetched to think that Rolex actually has a serious problem making the bezel. The Pepsi bezel has been around for years. If they changed the formulation at some point and it's hard to like get the colors to line up with however they make the ceramic, they would just go back to the old way, unless the old way was like super toxic or something. Again, I'm sorry for all the pinball analogies today, but in the world of pinball, one of the things that people have, let me show you the current price performance. This will come up into play. I'll let you enjoy the graph while we get ready to talk about it. In the world of pinball, that became the whole story about clear coat. Like they clear coat the playfield so the art doesn't wear off. Well, the EPA has revised the formulation requirements because the original clear coats were extremely toxic. So modern clear coat is made to be not so toxic. And now people for a time thought the clear coat is now inferior because it's not the toxic version. And so we get dimpling. Whereas, honestly, the reason we have dimpling in pinball, in my opinion, is because we put clear coat on super thick now, because homeowners demand that their art never wear. And so we put on super thick clear coat, and it's going to dimple because the ball strikes it and it's soft. So, whereas in the old days, the diamond coat, super thin clear, super thin, because the operators, they wanted the games to last, but the manufacturers wanted them to wear out. So anyway, moving on. No, Mike, I've looked ahead. Wait, am I saying the watches have a dimpling problem? No, I'm saying people think that that the watches have a dimpling problem on their bezel. In this case, dimpling would be cracking or the color bleeding over on where the Pepsi transition from blue to red is. That's what some people are speculating, that Rolex, which makes 1.2 million watches a year, is too stupid to make Pepsi bezels. That's what they're saying. I'm saying that is a bunch of BS. Rolex is not having a problem making the Pepsi bezel. Could they have a shortage of getting one of the colorations, like the ceramic components? Maybe. Could they have gone to a method that was inferior? Maybe. But there are lots of ways to make ceramic. It's not like some new EPA thing. If they had changed up the formulation, they could always just go back to the old formulation. I don't buy it. Absolutely not. It's not a dimpling issue. Here's what I think is happening. This graph is what's happening. The GMT Master II Pepsi, which still, now bear in mind, this is not a y-axis of 0. So I want to point that out. This is $18,000, which is above the retail price of this watch. However, peak of the pandemic pricing was right around March-ish. In this case of this watch, it's probably April. A lot of watches peaked out in March. Some peaked out in April. Generally, after that, they fell, though. You see, pricing kind of in the pandemic was floating around that $22,000 price point, peaked out at about $28,000, $29,000, and now has slid below, I won't say it's pre-pandemic levels, but late 2021 pandemic levels. We're now trading at around that $19,000 price point, or as you can see here, $19,224 US. That is reason enough, as I close the link, for people to, I'll load it back up, for people to go ahead and not offer their Pepsi to the gray market. Because unless, or I should say the secondhand market, not the gray market, because unless you needed the money, and you remember, you and Pepperidge Farm are there together, and you all are like, you know what, we remember when this watch was trading almost $30,000. So do I want to go ahead and sell it for 19, or do I want to wait? Maybe I sit on it for a few years. Maybe I help spread some rumors that it's going to be discontinued. Because now it's a self-perpetuating cycle. Even if they didn't mean to spread a rumor, even if they didn't spread a rumor. Now, if you own a Pepsi and you don't want to keep it anymore, why would you sell it right now? Why would you offer it to a secondhand dealer? Who's going to offer you what? 17,000-ish to try and sell it for 19. And you might be like, well, I'm hearing Rolex might discontinue it. I heard it on Watches with Dennis that they might discontinue it. So now you're going to hold until Watches with Wonders, hoping that it does get discontinued, because then you're going to try and ask for 25 or 27, or maybe it gets up. But people will start thinking, oh, maybe it becomes something because it's so popular. Now, I don't want any of that. I'm saying all of that. I'm like doubling and tripling down on all this stuff that I think this production issue argument is nonsense. That does not mean Rolex won't discontinue it. The Pepsi bezel has been around a long time. Rolex has done a lot of different colorways for a long time. And there's plenty of reason to go ahead and move on. Note, though, that the Pepsi remains very popular. As noted in this Watch Pro article, again, link in the description, you can go read it. The Batman, the black and blue one, 15,300 is what that trades at. So there is more demand for these Pepsis for whatever reason. But again, a lot of people aren't offering them secondhand. So you could be in a boat where people are just waiting and getting them retail, especially if the retail listing wait times are shorter and shorter and shorter. So they go that route. And then people are just like, I'd rather wait. And the secondhand market is like, well, we have less demand. People, the prices have fallen. We can't make as much. I mean, there's a lot of factors. Could I be wrong on all of it? Absolutely. Might be totally wrong. But I think this notion that they're having a production issue, if they are having a production issue, I have to think it's supply chain oriented. I don't buy the argument that the greatest luxury watchmaker in the business can't make a ceramic dial in two colors when it's black and red, but they can do it when it's black and blue. It just seems exceedingly stupid. Not to mention that the ceramic bezel's been around a long time. This is not new tech. This is not new tech. Affordable watches do ceramic bezels. I don't buy it. I don't buy any of that. I think it's nonsense. So those are my thoughts. So let me catch up on chat because you all probably have thoughts, and I would like to know what you guys are actually thinking about it. So Scott says, the Coke bezel works better for me anyway, and I hope they bring it back. I am a big fan of the Coke bezel. I would really like to see a Coke bezel in ceramic because most of the Coke bezels we see are aluminum and they have faded quite a bit. So the red isn't stark. It's very pink now on a lot of the watches. And I think it would be a really good contrast with the black and red. Like Scott, I historically at least favored the Coke bezel over the Pepsi bezel. The Pepsi bezel has grown on me quite a bit over time. Black and red, I just think looks really, really good together, but I'd love to see them side by side to make an evaluation myself. But going off of my old gut instinct, I would say I agree, Scott. I would be more than happy to see the Pepsi go away and to see a black and red. I'm not in the market for a GMT Master II anyway, so I guess ultimately it doesn't really matter, but just from a watch fan, I'd like to see it and kind of see them side by side with the same tech and the same materials and make a judgment call. Plus, it would be interesting if they keep the black bezel or if they do something, they don't have to. It's Rolex. They can change things up how they want. I imagine they would keep the black bezel, black dial. But we'll have to see. There are a lot of rumors that the Coke will come back, but those rumors have been around for years. It could come back at any point. Who knows? Rolex does what Rolex wants. These are bezel inserts. It's not like revolutionary, changing the world stuff for the company to do. Neff says Pepsi is the way to go. It matches everything. I think that's a big reason why a lot of people kind of love it and it's sort of fun. Red's sort of fun. So Mike says, we already talked about this. I called this one out about the dimpling example. Neff says, if Pagani Design can make Pepsi bezels in ceramic, I'm going to say Rolex can do it too. Yeah, no, this thing about, this drop off and Pepsi's being flipped. There's, again, from this graph that you all can see, there are market reasons to not want to flip it, especially, it doesn't really take, I hate to do the Pepperidge Farm thing again, but it doesn't take a big Pepperidge Farm brain to remember this far back and remember when this was. Imagine if you bought a watch, sat through all of this, wanting to sell it, and you waited too long. You diamond hands that too much, and now here you are. You wanted it to even be an even worse example. Imagine if you bought it like right here. Like you bought it used, thinking you were going to flip it, like you were going to be your own TPG backpack flipper. And now look at you, stuck, sad, and alone in the rain. Rain is optional. So, there's just a lot of things like that. Scott says, I'm interested to hear the chat's opinion on the new two-tone GMT. I tried one on recently, but I've never had a watch with multiple metals. Well, we'll have to see, Scott, if the chat has any thoughts on that. Mike, thank you for tuning in. I do appreciate it. And let's see. Neff says, if you paid $30,000 US, well, maybe US, don't know which dollar you meant, but I'll say it was US dollars, for a GMT, you deserve to lose your ass. Okay. I'm not going to say on deserve, that's a judgment call. I'll phrase it this way. If you're buying watches to flip, you're playing a game. You're playing a certain game. You're playing trade wars, buy low, sell high, all that stuff. So you don't get any sympathy from me if you played the game and you roll snake eyes. So not saying you're gambling, but you were playing a game. That market was going to have to cool off. We saw this in everything: comic books, pinball machines, all the rest. So we saw it all over the place. But that is it for me. Thank you, everyone who was able to tune in live. I need to go ahead and take off. It's time for Godzilla. Godzilla -1, -1. I don't know what he's doing math. I think he's doing imaginary number math or something. So I need to see what he does. But so that's going to be it for me today. I will have a video of my top 5 watch releases, in my opinion, for 2023. It'll probably either come out today or tomorrow. I have already recorded it. I'm just still editing it. And we will be back, or we should be back next Saturday for a live stream talking about who knows what. But take care, everybody. Have a great weekend, and I'll catch you all on the next one.